Creatine, although it's been around for years and years and years, and it's got probably more scientific research behind it than any other supplement on the planet, maybe excluding caffeine, or with the exception of caffeine. But either way, the two of them together, they probably form most of the supplemental research that's out there. Creatine is before I get into anything else, creatine is a very good supplement, particularly for resistance training, increases in strength, and increases in intra-workout energy, that sort of thing. But the reason I'm doing it is because even though this is the case, you still read a lot of people's comments, you hear a lot of people's comments that you talk to, or I have heard these comments that creatine is bad in some way. That it's got this, it has this weird negative connotation to it, and not for everyone. Obviously, a lot of people understand the uses of creatine and its benefits and so on. But I can only put this down to more people as new people come into the world of resistance training. They get gym memberships. They start looking into things like supplements after a while. They probably ask their friends, what's good to use. And this is where these kind of myths and sort of falsehoods kind of perpetuate, is amongst that kind of sort of level of knowledge, is where people have heard from a friend that creatine can hurt your kidneys, give you cancer, blocks caffeine, makes you swell up to 3 times your size because of water retention, and makes you look like a flabby bitch, so on and so forth. Then there's also this sort of hype that's driven by the supplement industry that says creatine monohydrate has been superseded by creatine nitrate or creatine malate or nitro fucking whatever creatine, and so you're pulled in these two directions. There's this bro telling you that creatine's shit because it's going to make you look all flabby and shit, and then you've got the supplement companies trying to hawk God knows what forms of creatine to you for XYZ percent more than bog standard creatine monohydrate. And I'm pointing at this tub here because I've just got an example. Muscle Tech, I have no affiliation with them, but this is their platinum creatine monohydrate. It's micronized as well, which means it mixes with water better, because if you remember 10 years ago, the creatine that came out would have been like smashing up a bunch of blackboard chalk and chucking it in water and trying to drink that, and it was disgusting, just from the mixability of the whole thing. So creatine monohydrate, firstly, what does it do, and then I'll explain a few things about the benefits, then what types of creatine to use, how to use it to get maximum effect, and so on and so forth, and ultimately any side effects that might come with it. Creatine is actually, what it does is it exists in our diets. We eat it. It's a costly process to actually produce it in terms of energy, though. So our bodies we can get it from meat, fish, eggs, all these kind of things in our diet, but it kind of tops out in production. I think it's about 4 grams circulating around our body, and that's just it's like a cut-off switch that says, the sort of diminishing returns of making this are causing too much energy loss or whatever. So the body caps it out. It's not through a safety thing. It's not like some kind of negative feedback loop, because the body can hold much more than that amount. In fact, it's around the 25 gram mark, I believe. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. But the point is, supplementation can increase levels of creatine. What it does is creatine binds to phosphate groups, and it forms what's called phosphocreatine or creatine phosphate in the body. phosphate groups, you might have heard of adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate, and adenosine monophosphate. Adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is the principal sort of currency of energy in your body. So it's the base kind of form of energy that your body uses on a cellular level to perform functions such as lift a weight, do this, whatever. Phosphate groups, when they are taken from ATP, so when you take one away, that actually yields energy. So that's the energy. The breaking of those bonds creates the energy from ATP, and that then leaves you with ADP and adenosine monophosphate. So adenosine diphosphate and adenosine monophosphate. So if you've got a big storage of phosphocreatine flowing around your body, which generally gets stored in your muscles and quite a bit in your heart, it will donate a phosphate group back to ADP. So if you've got a reservoir of phosphocreatine, you already have that substrate to feed back into ADP to make ATP again, to be broken again to make ADP, and so on and so forth. Because of the cycle that goes through, you have a continuous kind of source of energy. Now, this is useful because in a particularly tough workout, you can kind of exhaust your body's natural levels of creatine phosphate. That is what you get from your diet. So supplementation for a strength athlete is incredibly beneficial, because if you keep taking the same amount every day, then you'll keep topping up that phosphocreatine pool, and you'll keep having that available phosphate group ready to reform ATP every time you exercise. So, and that's because in your muscle, in simple terms, if you've got more ATP than ADP, you can perform stronger contractions. So if the ATP to ADP ratio is bigger, you're going to get stronger contraction. So that's why creatine supplementation is associated with strength particularly. It's not necessarily associated with hypertrophy or hypertrophy, whatever you want to, muscle growth. Although that will be a byproduct and a good friggin' benefit, let's be honest. But it's more associated with the actual strength within a workout. So whereas, say, for example, protein supplements, you wouldn't really, you don't associate that with the actual performance of your resistance training. Even though, yes, growing more muscle from protein supplements will ultimately impact on your performance. That's the same way that creatine, increasing strength, ultimately impacts on the on the muscle growth itself. So, creatine is a good thing in the body.